Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Wright Human, cartoonist extraordinaire. I am the community outreach manager for the Columbus Cartoon Coalition. I can't believe I still have to think about that every time. Like, which order of C's? But yeah, we are an organization in Columbus consisting of over 150 comics creators based in the Central Ohio area. We are here today uh, to kind of get the groundwork going. In mid August, we are going to be launching a crowdfunder campaign to fund this year's group anthology project. And the cover artist for that fantastic project is here. Danyell Dean has been a member of our group for quite a while. Is a graphic artist or graphic designer, animator, and does the webtoons comic Something's Fishy in Florida. How are you doing today, Danielle?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty happy to be home from work.
I feel that. Are you in an office or are you full time freelance?
Um, I'm in the office like almost full time for like a real estate title company doing like graphic design, print stuff. But I've also picked up like a lot of freelance recently, so I've kind of like overboard myself. Currently, I'm also animating and like doing some lawyer graphics. So that's
That's nice. You got animating for advertising.
yeah, or like also I'm advertising for like an indie game right now too, doing like some like funny cutscenes.
Nice. Can you say what the
Yeah,
game is, or
yeah. It's RZ. It's like sort of like a Zelda CDI type game.
that's a throwback?
Yeah, yeah.
I've seen your art. I will say the animations are going to be way better. Um,
Oh,
but
thank you.
yeah, you earlier in the year did draw this in your style challenge that we issued to redesign the logo for C3, or just do a version of it. And
Yeah.
that logo, for anyone who doesn't know, is I have too much camera cut off. Up in the upper right hand corner. And what you created blew everything else out of the water. So we're making it the cover of this. And I just want to show it real quick so that people can get exactly what we're talking about here. But I remember seeing this and thinking, just absolutely insane. I don't know how you managed to uh, just nail it this hard.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I was brainstorming for a little bit, like just on a sketch piece of paper, scrap paper. I'm like, huh, I have time to like maybe submit to this, and eventually just came together to focus on comics and like the medium of it.
You know, it's funny because every time I look at this, there's more interesting stuff that I end up finding in it. First off, there's a lot of comics nerd stuff in here. Uh, this was full digital, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's made in Clip Studio with like a lot of different brushes
Yeah,
and
I was noticing
stamps.
just all the different textures that show up from the different types of brushes you ended up using. I like that you have the halftone patterns down here. Like, there's some real comic nerd like print stuff happening in this section. I
Oh, thank you.
remember Kyle pointing out in the other interview that you did. You recently had another interview, by the way. Check that out in our channel history. But that the eye is a nib also.
Mhm.
You put a lot of detail into this. How long about do you think
Thank
this
you.
took?
Um, Maybe a couple to like 3 hours. Um,
3 hours.
yeah, because I
Yeah,
already like rough sketched it out. I'm like, okay, I get the idea, and I just
just went for it.
yeah, I experimented, played around. I have a
That
bunch of layers.
that is absolutely incredible. Like, one of the things that's funny, I've known a few people who came to comics from animation. You guys work fast. It's one of the most amazing things to me. I'm terrified of animation.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
because like it's just so much work and you have to put out so much. But when you guys switch over to doing comics, man, your output is insane.
I started with comics when I was like a kid, so I like made like little complete booklets, uh, just folded up paper and like taped them together or stapled them, and like would color with like crayon or like colored pencil or marker or whatever I had on me. So I've been making like comics for a long time.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of people have that type of background where we all start young and then go and do something else and then come
Yeah.
back to it. Kelsey from the chat wants to show some appreciation. So dope.
Thank you.
And also, hello, Jessica. Thank you for joining us. So looking over some of the stuff you went to, it was it CCAD originally that you went to, or was that your grad program?
That was my bachelor's program
That
because
was your
I
bachelor's program.
yeah because I right after high school I was like I need to like get better because I didn't feel like I got a great education in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and so I went to community college just to like get my foundation in like art, anatomy, sketching, painting, along with like digital because like I don't feel like there was enough like tutorials or like help back then um, to teach people like digital art.
Yeah, a lot of people start off with digital just completely flying blind and trying to
Yeah.
figure it out as they go. But you've seemed to figure out some really interesting stuff with it just based on what we've seen. You also have a running webtoon right now, Something's Fishy in Florida. Um, in your previous interview, you had mentioned that you came from Florida. Have you done a lot of environmental stuff with them? Because a lot of that comic seems to be tied into that.
Um, I think I'm just like influenced by that's where I grew up, and it just, um, yeah, I'm very inspired by the environment, and I like appreciate the weather and stuff now more. Um, yeah, there's a lot more like tropicalness that I was just sort of surrounded by like 24/7, like every season. It was just like hot on hot on hot.
Yeah.
Um,
How'd you end up in Ohio then? Like besides school, how'd you end up staying in
yeah.
Ohio?
Um, well, yeah, I went to school here because I liked after visiting the city. I really liked the city. I liked the school and like the resources. Yeah, and left for work, and I came back because my boyfriend Francis lives here, and I don't know. I really like Columbus. Like I like the city. I like the vibes. It's a very like calm presence versus like back home in Florida where my family is currently. It's just a more chill environment here.
Now, one thing that I was definitely interested in looking over Something's Fishy in Florida. One of the things that I'm curious about is if you think animation influenced how you do layouts and stuff like that. Because obviously you're doing webtoons, a lot of it's going to be vertical scrolling, but a lot of it really felt like you were almost prepping a storyboard. Do you know
Oh,
what I mean by
definitely.
that?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that sort of how the process ended up working, or is it set up so that you've basically taken a page and cut it apart and can put it back together?
Well, I come from like at school I like studied animation, so I got a better grasp on it. And after like or like during school, I like put my focus in storyboarding, like laying out the story. Um, so I think that did transcribe to my comic. I also like it's inspired by my thesis animation, so I think that also with like the look of it, especially with like the textures and stuff, was influenced by that. And with storyboarding, like I don't start off like linear, like I beginning to end. Um, I often like jump around with it, um, and I think that influenced like with my writing too, where I would like have one scene in my mind, but then bounce around before committing uh, to a scrolling format layout.
Do you like the scrolling format layout, or is it just like that's sort of what a lot of people who try to do webtoons end up stuck with?
Um, I think it's just easier because like I even though I took like comics at CCAD, like I have a minor in it, but I think it's just easier for my brain to handle right now, just making the progress of scrolling down. I'll probably will like make another comic where it's like a page at a time, but right now
Yeah,
I can just
yeah, just get
focus on
going
that.
and
Yeah.
have the whole thing be continuous scrolling. Just to throw it out there because it got brought up. I have never heard Ohio or Columbus described as chill before.
I think comparatively, like Florida people at least like driving wise too, are very like much angrier and hostile. I don't know if that's just the tourists or like it's just hot, so it makes people mad. Um, there's also not a lot of places to hang out unless you're like at a restaurant, or at least in like in Central Florida, you're either going to Disney or like a bar, or like the city and like the area I grew up in is like built for tourists, so it's um, not that free friendly.
The it's funny also, just like as someone who is also a transplant to Ohio, it's amazing to me how many people really don't like this state if they're from it. And so many
Hmm.
people who are from outside come in and are like, this place is amazing. What are you guys talking
Yeah,
about?
no, definitely. I bring people here, like my friends visit here all the time, and just like, wow, I didn't think Ohio was like nice, or like I could see myself here, especially since like a lot of the people's rent has been increasing since the pandemic, because a lot of work from home and like older rich people keep moving to Florida like nonstop. They visit here and like, wow, it's affordable and it's nice, and I can drive. There's not tons of traffic. They don't see the pluses. Like you don't see the benefits or like negatives of where you're from until you like move out or see a different part of the country, I guess.
Absolutely. But yeah, it cracks me up every time. People are like, you went
Yeah.
to like this place is somehow seen as that awful, and it really isn't. One thing I also wanted to share,
Mhm.
just because we were talking about it, and you mentioned the textures and things like that, like the art styles
Yeah.
in your piece. I want to show people that very quickly because
Yeah.
it is one of the most striking things about your work on this. Also, I was cracking up because the sister character in your thing looks a lot like the character from one of my comics that I get made fun of for.
Get made fun of for.
Oh, well, I'll be honest, a lot of that comic involves boob jokes, but um, yeah, just the textures you do in some of this stuff, the color choices are amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Are you using any 3D rendering or photo stuff like that?
Oh,
Ship looks pretty detailed.
oh yeah, that's like a stock, but I use primarily free stock
Hmm.
for like especially a lot of like backgrounds. Like I need a fish, I need a texture of like scales or something.
Right.
I use there's a lot of free ones. There's Pexels, Pexels. Also Pixabay.com, Pixabay.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of the museums have like an open source for people to download art. So that's free for like anyone's personal use or commercial use or whatever they want. So um, just like adding that as like an overlay or a multiplier, whatever you want. I think just added like more life to my stuff, especially when I was making my thesis, and I felt like just cell shading was very flat.
Right. Was a lot of your when you're doing animation, were you doing cell shading?
Yeah, I started off with the cell shading,
Mm,
and so I would like have like a highlighted color and do that in like Harmony or Toon Boom Harmony, which was the program I was taught in school, and then I would export the PNGs for each layer, and they would be in a folder and import those into After Effects, where I could adjust the color of the shading or the color of the characters much easier, and also input textures like in Photoshop. So you just clip it, change the layer mode, and it just heightens, I think, like the compositing and final look.
absolutely. One other thing I'm noticing, even going back to your submission for the Draw This in Your Style challenge, you have a real love of CMYK. I'm
Yeah,
spotting,
yeah. I like really bright, saturated colors.
which feels appropriate for Florida.
Yeah.
So, did you end up getting much digital training specifically, or is this largely self-taught?
Um, I guess pretty much self-taught. I would like take online courses, especially recently or like the last year or so, um, to get to more of an idea for like comics and like the anime manga style. Like there's a site called Class 101 Plus they have like now a subscription version where you just pay $20 a month and you have like unlimited access to like their library of like tutorials taught by other artists. So it's been really helpful and like eye-opening to see other people's like techniques.
It's one of the big learning curves when people pick up digital is depending on the program. Like you mentioned in the previous thing, Clip Studio, right?
Yep.
I found Clip Studio completely impossible to figure out until I had a better understanding of other programs. And then when I did, Clip Studio is almost all I use now. But
Yeah.
It definitely had a learning curve to it. And you also mentioned After Effects. Have you done much with the Adobe suite?
Yeah. I started off by like learning like Photoshop way back when, and then a little bit of Illustrator. And like before Clip Studio, I was mostly doing all my art in like Photoshop and stuff. And then after coming to CCAD, I got more involved. I started learning After Effects, getting into Premiere. And that really helped with my like animations. And I've mostly been doing InDesign and Illustrator. I learned more of it after graduating when I was like, oh, well, I have some background in graphic designs. I'll just work in graphic design, and took a Domestika course, which is also they have very cheap classes and you can learn the basics and understand everything. And that just really helped me with my graphic design work.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to check out some of these sites, honestly. Like I'm trying to teach myself Blender right now, and it's been a struggle. So getting a creator course might actually be really helpful. One other thing from the last interview that jumped out at me, and I think it'd be interesting to talk about. You went to art school a little bit later in life than a lot of the other people attending. I got the impression. You talked about how some of the places you looked, everyone was straight out of high school and you weren't. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
I mean, I said before, like, I didn't feel like I was prepared enough right out of high school, which, like, I think a lot of people just want to jump to, like, a 4-year college, like, right away. But I was confident that not only was I not skilled enough, but I also I didn't have, like, the financial, like, stability to, like, go to, like, a 4-year college. And, like, the places around me where I grew up weren't the greatest and aren't the greatest. So I just had a plan to like, I'm going to get better. And over time, take baby adulthood steps, I guess, and save up and be ready to go out and have more a clear idea of what I wanted to do. Cause at one point I didn't know if I wanted to do animation. Cause I was during my time in like my community college, I was also going to go maybe think about conservation. I was doing a lot of fresco and like fine art and recreating those like masterpieces, and I really enjoyed that. But I also enjoy like just drawing like silly little doodles and having the time, like giving yourself the time to like think about what you really want. I think really helped me.
It's definitely beneficial. Do you think I feel like I don't want to say something that'll make you dunk on your classmates, but do you feel like it gave it was a very different experience for you coming in a little bit older and wiser as a result from having done this extra?
Yeah, definitely. Like I came here like to Columbus, but also CCAD, and I was just like really grateful for like all the resources we had. Like I didn't have I've never had a Cintiq or like I've only like seen them like on like YouTube or whatever. Yeah. And having the experience to just draw on those and have like 24/7 pretty much access at school. I think a lot of like students didn't take advantage of like their time there, managing their time, I guess.
Francis, I see you calling for us to dunk, and you're appreciated.
And I think there was like also like a social curve, which like I think there was more of a focus on like socializing than like working, I guess. Which I'm like, yeah, it's great to like make friends, but I think you make friends over time just by doing your thing, I guess. I don't know. It came more like the friendships I made were like more natural, I guess. It wasn't hard or like pushy.
Yeah. And that's honestly something that I think is incredibly valid. I was someone who did undergrad immediately after high school and did not understand the resources and benefits of everything that I could have gotten out of it. And then when I went to art school myself, it was when I was about 29, like just about to go into my 30s. The median age of my grad school class was 30, and
Yeah.
it's amazing how different your perspective is when you just not like you were doing community college, but still like in the world and not immediately going on to the next expected thing and taking time to figure
Yeah.
out what you're going to do. It really can be amazing. Um, Another thing that I was curious about, we talked about this a little bit pre-stream, but you came across an artist's worst nightmare, which is an arthritis diagnosis a little while back. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about how that's affected your art process and like what you went through when you got that, if you're comfortable with it.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I got it summer of 2019 and I graduated spring of 2019. So yeah, I was like after graduating, I got a job in San Francisco animating for like a fantasy football app and ended up doing their graphic design for a while. And then one day I just woke up and like I had the most intense pain in my like not knuckles, like fingers, and it
Mm-hmm.
was very hard to like bend them. Like it was like the most pain I felt, I think, before, and I didn't know what to do. I like tried to see a doctor and tried, but I didn't have the right insurance, so no one could see me, and I was just pushing myself to like draw because that was my job. I had to like animate um, a little characters. I had to like draw, storyboard, rough them out, color them all by hand. So I was just self-diagnosing myself. I'm like, it sounds like I have rheumatoid arthritis, but I don't know because no one will see me. Um, and I sort of suffered there for like a month or two um, until I was like, yeah, I have to go home. I was offered full time, but I'm like, I just need to like get diagnosed. And I got the confirmation. Um, and the first thing the doctor that I started seeing said was, you should stop eating meat. Um, because that was my protein levels are too high. Like, um, but I did eat meat a lot, and I think cutting down on that helped a lot with like the pain. Also, but that didn't stop the pain completely. Like it's a good manager, and it like brings it down a lot. But I also started getting like pains in my knees, which has never really happened before, and so I started seeing a physical trainer, and um, he gave me like a lot of like routine exercise which helps strengthen my muscles, which helps with like the joints and stuff. I also had like a hard time drawing. After drawing for a long time, I would start getting like thumb pains, like thumb bone pains, that led up to here. And one of the things he told me was to exercise, like do back and arm exercises to help strengthen that area, because it doesn't matter if you're doing like focusing on back, you're always using your hands, and that helps strengthen the muscles around that area.
So, have you had to have you been able to keep up with things like animation and stuff like that with this diagnosis? Because like I don't want to say that comics are easier or anything like that, but you're not drawing 30 cells per second or anything close to that.
No, yeah, definitely. I think it's never been as bad as when I first got it, since managing it from like March 2020 or February 2020. That's when I got like officially diagnosed, and
Mm-hmm.
I was given a prescription, but I don't feel like that really helps as much as the diet and the exercise has. I think a lot of things are manageable if you like make um, life changes, and it's just adjusting. But I've like even now I don't take my medicine as much. Um, like I'll go days without it, and like, oh yeah, maybe I'll just take it. And I don't feel like the inflammation as much anymore, really, unless I'm like on a really like I've been drawing way too much. Um, and I start feeling like the thumb pain, but yeah.
Absolutely. So it's just good to hear because that's the artist nightmare. Anything that happens to hands, immediately everyone in the room is freaked out. Um, and it's good to hear that like you've faced that fear and we're able to get past it, and you still get to do all the comic work. You're doing incredible stuff with Something's Fishy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I thought my life was over like in summer 2019. I'm like, well, this is what I studied for, and it just
And
hurts to live. But
and literally months, like a couple months after you graduated.
yeah,
Yeah, like that is some crazy timing. One thing I'm also interested in from Something's Fishy, a lot of it has body horror elements. And I'm curious if you have a horror background or anything like that.
yeah, I've always been like fascinated, I guess, by like horror movies, but also like scary life stories, true crime,
Hmm.
the supernatural, occult, and just like bending, like scary things, bending of reality, like just the outskirts of like what people think are normal. So I like playing with that a lot in like my own work.
Yeah, I was reading through it, and as soon as I got to the final part of, I think it's By Chance,
Yeah.
uh, and I was just like, oh, this is not the comic I thought it was. It is pretty amazing, though, seeing the sudden shift dealing with like slice of life and the sharp left turn it takes. What are some of your big inspirations when it comes to this kind of stuff?
Uh, I'm sort of inspired by a lot of different things. Like I can't pinpoint like one exact thing. Like a lot of ideas I just like fester on.
Just get an image stuck in your head, and you're like,
Yeah,
eventually, this has to be a comic.
yeah, like the original like concept started off as like a joke character, and then I just sort of built a world around that, I guess, and put it in a more serious direction. Like I've always been inspired, like style wise, by like manga or anime since I was like in middle school, um, and trying to get like that style down. S- Story wise, I kind of like bounce around with things. Like I can't think of like start like what the influences for this comic was, but I'm like inspired or like um, by like the darker things. Um, like the Invincible comics are a really good one.
Mhm.
Um, that goes pretty dark for it being like a superhero comic. So I like that like twist of you think it's like one thing and then it turns out to be something else.
That's a very good comparison, especially considering season two of that's coming out soon.
Yeah.
But I know you're talking about the comic, not the show, but hey, I can be happy about both. Um, another thing I wanted to bring up. We talked very briefly about this beforehand, also, but you recently had your first convention.
Oh yeah.
Welcome,
Space.
yeah, welcome to the world of tabling.
Yay.
So, was it what you expected? Better, worse, different?
I think it was about what I was expecting. I get really like nervous sitting in front of people, but it was nice having C3 being there and me being a part of C3 versus me just tabling alone for like the first time.
Yeah, it definitely can be intimidating. How?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, how long have you been with C3?
Geez. I think might have joined in like 21 or 22. I'm not sure exactly.
So towards the beginning of when things were getting started with it.
I think so. I think I just joined the Discord and was like lurking along with like most of the Discords I'm on. I just lurk.
It's but yeah, we were glad to get you involved in the actual tabling. That was pretty exciting. You were representing C3 specifically, right?
Yeah. I mean, I sold my comic, but I also like try to promote C3 as much as I can when I was like alone, I guess.
Oh, right. That was when
Yeah,
we had the panel, so we abandoned you for a while.
yeah,
That must have been exciting.
that was great. As people were like, "What is this?" I'm like, "This is this, and here's a sign, and here's free comics. This is what we do." It's very good. Um, like, I'm very grateful for C3 being like a community that's like open to like artists. Because like moving back to Columbus, I sort of wanted to be more involved in like the local arts and like happy that there's like a comic scene here.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Kelsey says, "Hey, I was there next to you." That's
Yeah.
true. I forgot Kelsey didn't join us for the panel. But yeah, like the comic scene in Columbus is definitely it's big, but also disparate, and it's something that took a while to get used to. What was it like in Florida when you were down there?
Uh,
I know a lot of the time as a professional artist you were in lockdown, but was there
yeah.
a community to connect to where you were?
Um, Not really. Like during my time, like after moving from San Francisco back to Florida, I was freelancing at like a Florida animation studio, but that's also I got hired like right when lockdown started. So I was working from home, but even then, um, there aren't as many opportunities for artists or like artist meetups. I think just in like the last year, they started doing like a live sketch group where you like somebody stands and you draw them. That just started recently in like the city of Orlando.
Right.
So
Were you in Orlando or?
yeah, that's where my family is.
Hmm,
That's where I grew up around the Orlando area, so just like north of it, but still it's like a 30-minute drive. But it even like growing up, there it was very hard to like find a community or at least like people talking about art, meeting up to do art or look at art. Um, there were like opportunities for like, oh, we want somebody to like paint a mural, we want somebody to like paint some storm drains. Those were like the opportunities for artists, but it's not a very like artist friendly uh, area like the counties of like Seminole and Orange, which is like central Florida, Orlando.
right.
Yeah.
I'm come to think of it, I'm a little surprised by that, at least from an animation perspective, just because isn't there a lot of film production stuff that happens roughly in that area? I know Universal Studios, isn't that
Yeah.
based out of Orlando?
Yeah. Yeah. Like the Disney and like the theme parks,
I wasn't sure how close
Universal
Disney was, but
Studios.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I prefer Universal. I would like have a season pass or year pass.
Mhm.
I think it used to be more animation centered, like back in the '90s. But right now, it's been more like they have some like schools in Central Florida to teach people like 3D animation,
Mhm.
and a lot of those people who learn the 3D animation get to work or at least recruited into the theme parks or have like a deal with the theme parks to like animate uh, for the rides and stuff, which is great. But it's very other than that, there's not really many opportunities for like artists or like designers.
That is making sense, especially since Kelsey pointed out that animation is largely on the West Coast. That does make sense, I guess. Uh, I know voice acting has a big place in Texas. I don't know if that's the case for some animation too, but uh, who knows? So when you came up, returned to Columbus, I'm curious because I was in Vermont for art school right before moving
Yeah,
to Ohio, and everyone there used to talk about how Columbus was a comics mecca. Was that the conversation in Florida? I'm curious if it went that far south.
I don't think there was a conversation. There's
There
conversation
wasn't even a
period. There's
conversation.
there's like it's like silence. Maybe there's people like reaching for a community or trying to like find a community like I was, but there's just it's just radio silence for the most part in like my area of Florida. Like there's no like comics like events or like community or happenings. There's just there's just none of that.
Then it's a good thing that you had C3 in Ohio.
Yes, C3's yeah, like discovering C3 was great. Also, like during when I went to CCAD, CXC was also like a big thing that also led me to like, wow, Columbus as like a comics community. That sort of opened my eyes to that I've never really like seen before.
Made you realize that you realized what you were missing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely one of the perks of being here. By the way, if anyone's watching this and you are not a member of the Columbus Cartoon Coalition, we have the best places to find it if you're not an artist are on Instagram, instagram.com/c3.ohio, and our Ko-Fi account, ko-fi.com/Columbus Cartoon Coalition. But if you are an artist, reach out to us at one of those two places and we can get you into the artist Discord. There's a huge group community of us. We do anthology projects like the one we're promoting right now. And honestly, it's just a great place for people to hang out and show their work. I'm always like getting multiple notifications a day. Someone's like, check out my new page and stuff, or like all kinds of crazy stuff. And it is absolutely great. So tell me, is there anything you want to be like? You've got Something's Fishy in Florida going on, which you mentioned is about your like maintaining that is about your comic speed right now, which is great because it's a really cool project and you're putting out these huge landscape these huge scrolling comics. Are there any other projects on the back burner you really want to tackle at some point?
Yeah, definitely. There was like a show like I developed and like was pitching around to like networks because I had like the opportunity to. And if I can get that into like a comic format and like figure that out eventually, that would be great. It's like an adult series that's like on the verge of like the apocalypse. Like the apocalypse is going to happen like a year from now, and they're just trying to like prevent it, or like this group is trying to prevent it. And it does like a lot with like the morality of like society and like where we're headed. So very present day, but also with like supernatural, comedic, extreme takes, I guess.
So that does sound like a lot of fun. Is the main thing just time keeping you from getting it going?
Yeah, for the most part I made too many I took up too much recently, so I can't. Like I'm almost done with like the next episode for like next Sunday. I only have like a few panels left, but I've just been putting that on the back burner because I took too much freelance work recently.
A cartoonist overextending? No, do go on.
Yeah, because it's like, oh yeah, I'll just apply for this thing, and then you get a couple things at once, and you're like, yeah, I can do that.
Where do you usually find freelance work, by the way?
Like LinkedIn, but also like CCAD, since I'm a graduate, has like a thing called Handshake. It's their like career site, and they offer like a lot of times freelance or like one-off things along with like full-time, part-time work. So I've had a lot of success like doing that. Like for one of them, I made like an end of the year recap video for a company, and I'll probably end up doing that again this year because they want another one.
Well, it's good to hear you're working. Like that's always a scary thing for freelancers.
Yeah, no, it was scary for a while because I was let go from the graphic design, one of the graphic design jobs I had before, because there was like a new director and he just wanted to dispose of and create a new team that was all his own, even though like I was there longer and never directly brought it up with me that he was like unhappy. So I just focused on like Something's Fishy and like my own stuff for a while, but it does get scary. During that time I was like freelancing also, but not getting enough.
Was this freelancing like in the last couple of years or back when the pandemic started?
Oh no, this was like last October.
Last October. Okay, yeah. So this was post the arthritis diagnosis and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, before the pandemic, I got hired for an animation studio, and that was like a year and like a few months, but then they ran out of clients. So that also happens. Like if you're working at a smaller studio, they just don't have enough jobs.
Is I know you do some smaller animation for uh, with marketing and stuff like that, but is getting back into larger scale animation something you want to do long term, or are you more moving in a comics direction?
I think I want to do a little bit of both. I was since I haven't done animation for like a while, I was sort of intimidated by this recent project I'm undertaking with RZ, and I'm like, can I really like animate again? And I sort of just fell back into it. So I think I want to do animation again, but do a lot more smaller things and not try to pressure myself because I was also uh, back in 2020. I think I tried to like continue my thesis film because it was like part one out of three parts and try to finish like a couple seconds every day, which was way too much pressure. So I think I just need to do what I can and be happy with how much I can accomplish.
That's a good way to think of it. I've done one real animation for a film class in college.
Yeah.
It was like a 30-second stop motion of making a like origami crane fly.
Yeah.
And it took me like 8 of the most hellish hours of my life to put that together. So anyone who does any animation, I'm like, I don't know how you have that work ethic.
Yeah, you just gotta like buckle down and do it. I don't know, like I have ADHD and um like when I was at school I wasn't as frustrated as much, but nowadays I get more easily frustrated um by like making mistakes in my animation. Um but if I get into like a flow state, I just sort of go and forget to eat and
Yeah.
the rest of the world.
I have a number of friends with ADHD, and they often have that eating problem in particular,
Yeah.
like just that hyper focus. Uh, one thing I am curious about, because you mentioned like getting more annoyed by mistakes and things like that. When I'm doing a comic and I look at a single panel or a single page, I notice everything wrong with it that I did. What is that like when you're doing multiple frames of an animation? Like, is it that times 100 basically?
Yeah. Um it's a slower process. But also like so you kind of like it's a slower process so you see like the growth of
Mhm.
or creation of like a thing, but also when you're like trying to do like you're trying to jump from like one pose to another pose, and you make an in between for
Yeah,
that for those poses, and
you got
like
keyframes.
sometimes yep,
Mhm.
and sometimes I know it's like, oh, I didn't do that, like I didn't make it like big enough, or like I'm animating this character's hair and I made his hair like really big for like most of the scenes, and then like the last um the last few poses his hair just shrank, and I'm like, why did that happen? Why did I draw it like that? And I'll also notice like coloring mistakes a lot in the process, and it's like one frame, it's not even like most of it.
Yeah, but it jumps out at you, and it'll always jump out at you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
One of the ways I like to explain it to people, because all cartoonists or all artists in general have that problem where they're overly critical of their own work compared to everybody else. And the way I like to put it with graphic novels is picture your favorite graphic novel of all time. Now imagine you had to read it every single day for a year.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
basically what drawing a comic is like.
Yep.
And you'll know everything, every single tiny thing that's wrong with it. And every time you notice it, you'll go back through it and you'll see it again.
No, definitely. I made like an initial version of like something's fishy in Florida, and I'm like, this is bad. And then I just dumped like three or four like episodes out and then restarted it like all over again. And that's what like we have now.
I mean, one of the big things that I try to get as many artists as possible to understand is that to people who don't do art, we're unicorns. Like it's just everything we see looks wrong because we have very specific things we know we're going for and stuff like that. To everyone else, we're
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah. I don't really see that with like other people, but like your own work, it's like that's not that's not the like complete vision. Or like I don't know how to transcribe like even like with me I like vivid pictures and then I try to like put it to paper even with like the textures and stuff. Like that's not exactly right, but I've learned to just like move past it at like a certain point, especially with like a single panel.
We've got some pretty hard truths in chat. Hey, if Elon Musk can fail at running Twitter, you can succeed at animation.
No, he just has a hyper fixation on X. He thinks it's
Yeah.
like the cool, like apparently try to like make other brands or other things he's owned be X.
Yeah. Oh, all that's just a mess. I'm avoiding Twitter or X or whatever it's called until things get figured out.
I'm sort of okay with it. Because I never like I had a Twitter and like I was required by one for like a Twitter chat I was involved with for like Toon Boom, but I never really posted. I don't know why, because it was like really good for artists, like other artist friends I have, but I just wasn't good at posting or keeping up with Twitter. So I'm sort of okay if it goes away.
Yeah. Just to throw it out there, we're a little past the 45-minute mark. If anyone has questions for Danyell, now would be the time to post them. But yeah, we've done a few things on the changes in social media and the possible decline of social media. Kelsey in chat and I have a running theory that we may be moving more in the direction of Discord becoming the default and social media being on the relevant decline. What have your experiences with social media been? Because you have an Instagram, I seem to remember.
Yeah. Well, I only really got it when I started going to like CCAD.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I discovered like, oh, it's important to have like a social presence. It's important to have a portfolio site. So like before that, I didn't have anywhere to put things or like share things. I never like yeah, I had a Facebook, but I never really thought of like Twitter or Instagram. So I think it's vital to get new eyes on stuff. Like it'll still be important because otherwise, how will like recruiters or like people who are like interested in like a certain style like find people? There are like special discords I'm like a part of, like a lot of animation ones. So and like expos.
Mm-hmm.
And that's helpful too, but I still think it's easier to just like throw yourself to as many people as possible on social media currently.
So with the exception of Facebook, you mostly went into social media specifically for work, for comics or graphic design or any of these things.
Yeah, definitely. Like I mean I started my Instagram like website early on because like Turner, now Warner Media, was visiting CCAD, and I'm like, oh, I might as well like throw my hat in there and be like, because they were visiting with like certain students or selected students, and I came there as like a fresh person or just like a person just moved to CC. And I'm like, hey, I want to talk to Turner, and they're like, well, they're really looking for people who are like more advanced or people who are like juniors or seniors or sophomores or whatever. But I created a site and still submitted my work, and I was like one of the like people selected to talk with a recruiter. Probably because I had like I uploaded stuff I made in like college or right before coming to CCAD. I just threw it on there. So I just think having that like online presence really helped me.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, if you don't shoot your shot, even if they say, we're looking for something else, you never know. Worst they can do is say no.
Yep.
Yeah. Kelsey brings up, do you have aspirations of bringing any of your comics to print, or do you want to be exclusively online?
Yeah, I'd love to go to print at some point. I don't know when, because if I wanted to do like Florida, I'd have to like reformat it. And there's other ideas that I would love to bring to print. There's like, I know you asked me what my ideas were. Like I only brought up my adult one, but I'm trying to like make like a kid friendly one. It's kind of hard because like a lot of my like ideas and thoughts are like so like adult centered and like hard topics, but I'm trying to like minute that. So yeah, I'd like to do like a graphic novel at some point, based on that like more like kid friendly or at least like coming of age. idea.
Well, we have been talking about doing a live stream at some point about how to make mini comics. So hopefully something along those lines will be coming up. Maybe it'll be a good opportunity to try some stuff.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Be
Yeah.
down.
So with kid-friendly stuff, what's prompting you to want to try that?
I guess like stemming from animation, and like I grew up reading comics, like a lot more manga, but Pokemon and stuff. But I sort of just like devoured whatever I could get at like the local library. And nowadays I see more and more like kid-centered like comics and graphic novels. And like I got big into like FNAF for like the lore and stuff, and like that's targeted at kids, and like kids like a lot of like darker themed stuff. Or like I was talking to like I was with my boyfriend, and we're like at like a family gathering, like drawing with these kids, just like coloring pages, and the kid turns to us, it's like, I like creepy things. And we're like, okay, you like creepy things, like what? And he said animatronics, and I'm like,
I got you right here.
Yeah. Kids just latch on to like whatever's like dark games out. That's
absolutely. When I was in around third or fourth grade, I got into the scary stories of Tell in the Dark books.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, the old ones.
Oh yeah, with like the illustrations, they like creeped me out, but they just get so ingrained in your brain.
They absolutely did. Actually, one of the things I started doing a few years back was I learned how to draw in that style. It's graphite wash.
Oh my god!
And it is some of the most fun. If you like creepy stuff and want to get some hand-drawn practice, it's a mess. Like set up a place where you can be messy, but highly recommended. I actually had a funny conversation with my mom because I've done a number of horror comics, and she's like, I don't get where you got this interest in horror. Like, you never grew up with this stuff. And I had to run and grab those books and show them to her. And like, I was reading this in third grade.
Yeah.
And she was just like, we didn't know. We were just happy you were reading.
That and like the Goosebumps illustrations. Like, I only read some Goosebumps, but I can like recall, like, not just like the covers, which grabbed onto me, but like some of the stories inside.
And it's funny going back and reading a lot of that stuff because, like, in your head, it's this really adult, horrifying thing. And then when you actually sit down and read it, you're like, oh, they did tone this down.
Yeah.
Which is weird to think about. Like, they actually took this very horrifying concept and made it acceptable for this age group. Although they eventually changed the art, which cowards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had the same problem of trying to figure out how to take the ideas I have and make them kid-friendly. My biggest recommendation is find a writer who's a parent and have them help you.
There's a few like screenplay groups or like writers groups.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember.
Have you ever done screenwriting style or anything like
that? I mean, I try to pick up on it just from like a writer's perspective. I've also tried like writing like an animated like or TV episode before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are helpful. But I sort of like drawing and writing at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I guess like all comics, like artist people do. You got to see both. You can't just write. Yeah.
Do you generally script at all, or do you go straight to thumbnails or drawing?
I guess I do like thumbnails with like a bit of writing, because like my process is really messy. Like, here's a very bad example. Here's an example. Like, I'll have an image in my head, and then I just draw like a bunch of like different little like instances. So that's like the first like few chapters. They're very like they're very poor. But like in my head, it makes sense and I can organize it. But I just oftentimes just start like drawing a scenario, and then I'll like sometimes after I'm done like making those like little like thumbnails, putting it into like a script.
So you're basically like drawing elements from the entire story. Were those in order, or was it kind of random?
It was really random.
And then you just take it and put it in the correct order, and that's how you thumbnail.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really cool. I don't think I've ever seen that. I love that.
Yeah, I really bounce around with like little like scenes, and then I'll like put a Google Doc of like what I want like the speech bubbles to be pretty much. So at least there's like a flow of like conversation.
Apparently, this is an animator trick. I might need to do that. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, I've always bounced around with like things before like making like a final product.
Yeah. And that seems like it would be really helpful. Like, so many comics I have are built on one image that I have in my head. And I have to
Yeah,
like make the story that gets to that and things like that. But I
yeah,
really like the idea of you just get everything down
yeah,
in random order and then just put it correct.
yeah. It really helps me.
When you were doing the CCAD, did they have you do script writing stuff? Like, did they make you try other methods or?
I don't. They didn't really focus on story, and I think that's like a current problem that they have too. There's not really a
Mm,
focus on like the flow of a story or like a goal of the characters, like the wants and the needs. Like that's sort of a thing I learned like after leaving CCD, like watching like storyboard classes, uh, learning from writers. I think um, like my thesis film was like it started off with like the introduction of a story or at least part of a story. Like the I wanted to introduce the world, um, and like well, a lot of my ideas are like worlds. They're just like little like sections of I only have like 4 or 5 worlds that I like hop around with like ideas for. So I think that's where the stories like build off of. But I don't CC didn't really teach us like make a short film based on a story, and they didn't really guide how your thesis or short films were going to be.
is it the type of thing where they were kind of showing you how to build a portfolio more than anything? You know what I mean?
To a
Like
degree, yeah.
you'll have an absolute great set of pages that and no completed stories type thing.
Yeah, some, yeah. I think they wanted to teach you how to like use the programs and
Hmm.
like get an idea of like how to animate. Because we would do like exercises like oh bouncing ball, oh
Yeah.
weight, special effects, but I feel like it was all very random and like a lot of studios want to see like your voice, your story, your in, in, interpretation of something. I think the closest thing, like even the storyboarding class is very technical. It's like wide shot, close up shot, like um, it didn't really help with story. It was like also drawing in like a rough, sketchy style. That was also a class, but I think the closest story elements that came into like CCD was like character design, um, where you had to explain your like background for a character, and like at the final project was a group project where you as a group had to create like a show pitch. Um, each one drew a character, but it all had to make sense, and you give some episode examples as well. So I think that's the class where you had to defend your story and your like um, thought process for an idea.
Which is tough when they haven't really been teaching you how to tell stories.
Yeah, they had some writing classes. Like my boyfriend took a writing class, but even then, I think it's more just throwing your ideas to like the wall, and um, I don't think you get a lot of feedback in that.
Hmm. All right. Well, we are right around the hour period. I think that's a good time to wrap up. Danyell, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Danyell Dean on Instagram. I also have like a hype.co link tree thing, which has like access to like my TikTok, and because I started posting like storyboards there, um, as well as like my portfolio side for like boards and stuff. If you're ever interested in seeing that, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Absolutely. And the link for that is in the description of this video down below. We are doing this as a reminder in preparation for the first crowdfunder campaign for the Columbus Cartoon Coalition to fund C3's 2023 Anthology, which Danyell has done the amazing cover for. That campaign will be going live in mid-August, so please keep an eye on coffee.com/, Columbus Cartoon Coalition. That's scrolling right across the bottom of the screen right now. You can also find us at instagram.com/ c3.ohio. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up right there. Danyell, any sign off you do or anything like that on your videos?
I'll do the C3 thing. I don't know.
Sure, we can do the
I don't know
C3
what-
thing that Kyle did.
So
Let's do it.
So
This is
way?
it. Yeah.
Oh my.
There we go. All right, C3.
C3.
Yay.
Woo.
Rock on, guys, and never stop drawing.
Night.